Wednesday, May the 3rd. Lake levels about 914 1/4. It hasn't changed much, and nor has the water temperature. You know, water temperature still 56, 57 in the morning. It'll warm up to about 60. All these cold nights that we've had, you know, the water temperature seems like it's been stuck there for about 3 weeks. And I think that's fixing to change, because it looks like we're going to have a lot of 70s and 80-degree temperatures next week, and it's going to stay in the 60s at night. So that ought to help warm that water up a bunch. Now, I actually think the fishing's got tougher. You know, I think a lot of them fish that came in and spawned, that, you know, I had a real good fluke bite and Cinco bite, and I think a lot of people were catching them on just a little bit of everything because there were so many fish up there spawning. Now it seems like they've gotten done and disappearing from the banks. You know, I might be wrong, but I think there's a whole nother, you know, I don't think we're anywhere near done with the spawn. We've got a full moon coming up in a couple days, and with this water temperature warming up next week, I'll know next week when I do my fishing report whether or not a bunch more fish have come in, but they should come in next week. But, you know, anyways, that's my excuse for the bite kind of slowing down. I think a lot of them fish are still out there waiting to come in. What I've had to do, I'm still catching some fish in the same areas where they were spawning. I was catching them on a fluke and a Cinco, but it seems like I've had to go to a Ned head. I'm throwing an 1/8 ounce and a 3/16 5-fish ultimate Ned jig head, and I'm using different plastics. A lot of time I'll take my Cincos that I've been throwing that I've wore out, or my big bite fish stick, and just save them and cut them in half. Or I like the Strike King Zero, the elastic stretch. I just put a little dab of super glue on there. But if you've been out there fishing, you know, a lot of the places the moss is still real bad on the bottom. Now, when I was throwing a fluke and Cinco, I didn't have any issue with that because I wasn't on the bottom. But if you're trying to fish a drop shot, a split shot, or a Carolina rig, or Ned rig, or even jig or shaky head up there shallow, it's still a lot of moss. Now, one way you can get away from that is rig up a drop shot. You know, a lot of times people think of a drop shot as just made out there for fishing deep, but you can fish a drop shot exactly like you fish a split shot or a Ned rig. You know, throw it up on the bank, work it real slow. And I've been using a lot of different baits for my drop shot baits. I've been using an 1/8 ounce weight just so I can stay in contact with bottom. And another thing is, the past week or so, the wind has been so bad, a lot of places have been hard to fish. But a Strike King, you know, Morning Dawn will work. That worm I had on there was a Zoom Finesse worm, green pumpkin. This is a big bite Finesse worm. So I'm using a lot of different style Finesse worms, but it seems like anything with green pumpkin or watermelon. This is a Somali. It's a good little bait. It's almost like what they use up north for smallmouth fishing, but it's been working too. Big bite makes it. But, you know, there's a lot of different Finesse baits that'll work. I think where my bite has been a little bit better, we fished a Cops for Kids tournament yesterday, and a couple of our better fish came on a jerkbait, you know, on a mixed stick jerkbait out off of secondary points suspended in trees. And those fish out there have not spawned. You know, they are bloated, and I think they're just out there staging. There's not a lot of them. You know, I had to fish a lot of trees to get a few keeper bites, but they are out there. And a few of our fish also, you know, came on little swim baits. And, you know, this is going to be a deal that's going to work well up into the summer. But I'm setting out there in about, you know, 20, 25 foot, casting in towards the bank on a lot of these gravel points, or just outside of where I think the fish are going to spawn. A lot of times I'm letting it go down the bottom and just doing a slow and steady retrieve. And I'm throwing it on a pro swimmer head. And, you know, the color of the bait, you know, I'm throwing several different ones. This chartreuse and blue seems to be working probably about the best, but I am throwing some shad colors as well. And the smaller ones seem to be working, you know, like a 2.8 or 3.3. Now, on a big swim bait side, I've been catching some fish on hear a lot of people talking about a mag draft, which, you know, Megabass makes, and this is one right here. You know, I've been throwing this one, and I've also been throwing, it's called a suicide shad. And what I've got in it, I've got a hook with a belly, you know, with a belly weight in it, a swim bait hook, and I've got a treble hook hooked in there as well. I just take the treble hook and hook it back there. But this is a feast or famine bait. It's kind of one of them deals, if you're gonna throw it, you need to commit yourself to it, and you gotta cover a lot of water. Now, I think it's getting a little slower as well because there's less and less fish up there on the bank. But if another wave of fish comes in, it's a good bait to throw coming over the top of where them fish are bedding. Now out there a little deeper on them, you know, main lake and secondary points, them fish that are done spawning should be starting to move out on some of these points. And if I'm right about the fish, a lot of them still not have spawned, they'll be out on the same point. So you should be able to catch them coming and going, you know, where I'm throwing the swim bait. Also, I think you can throw a Carolina rig out there or a split shot. I've been throwing a wobble head with different style creature baits, like a beaver bait, twin tail chompers, like a baby brush hog will work real well. And something I have been catching some fish on is a tube, especially down lakes for smallmouths. I'm just taking a 1/4 ounce swimmer head, putting it up inside the tube, and then poking the eyelet out and tying it. And I'm fishing it in the same place I'm throwing like a football jig or Carolina rig out off the points. Sometimes I'm dragging it on the bottom, sometimes I'm just kind of popping it. But them smallmouth love a tube. And you know, green pumpkin, this one's a green pumpkin orange, but green pumpkin watermelon, or a green pumpkin purple flake or watermelon red flake will work as well. But a smallmouth really starting to get, you know, they should start to get on it better. A lot of these places where I'm catching the smallmouths, and the Kentucky's out there deeper, I'm still not catching loads of them, but the majority of the ones I'm catching out there are deep. Now I know the high school kids, you guys have got your big tournament this weekend. The whole deal with these finesse baits is you gotta fish slow. Looks like the wind's not gonna be as bad, so you just need to be patient. I would definitely have a topwater bait rigged up, like a popping bait or like a spook style bait, a walking bait, or this is a Berkeley surge shad, or you know, another bait to throw is the old cotton cordell redfin. And along with that, I would also have this swim bait handy. If you do see some fish surfacing, if they won't bite the top water, throw the little swim bait out there, just count it down, you know, 5 or 6 seconds, and slow, steady retrieve. A lot of times them fish will run them shad up to the surface, and especially post-spawn fish, they don't go down that deep. I mean, a lot of times when them fish get through spawning, they go back out over the deep water, but they don't necessarily go deep. They just go out there and suspend, kind of rest up, and when the food is present, like a school of shad, they'll get real active on them and start chasing them. So swim bait's a real good bait out there to throw. And you know, I don't think there's a certain area of the lake I seem to be catching more smaller fish up the Upper James, and it seems like Shell Knob to Ants Creek to Indian Point's kind of been my most consistent area as far as keeper fish. Now I would still fish in the creeks, you know, a lot of the secondary points and places where you think fish are going to be spawning. And I can kind of tell you from my experience the last week or so, if I'm not seeing a few fish on beds, my Ned rigs, drop shots, and flukes is not working that well in them pockets. So you might, you know, a lot of times you can get up real close to the bank so you can see the beds, see if there's fish on them. A lot of the beds I'm seeing are already all silted over, but there should be some new ones coming in. Whether or not they're going to do it in time for your tournament, you got 2 days of sunshine. I think that should be enough if it'll stay in the 60s at night. should be a lot more fish head to the bank. So I hope your kids all have a great tournament. Until next week, good luck, good fishing.